Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Nest Talk, the Emory Eagles Podcast. We are back today, finally back in the nest after a little hiatus last time. But today I'm so excited. We can get our first softball player, Isabel Cohen. And if you want to give us a little introduction to yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Isabel Cohen. I'm a junior pitcher from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I'm majoring in business, and my concentrations are in information systems and marketing.
So let's just jump right into, where did the love of softball come from? Was it always kind of the goal, or did you kind of do other sports growing up?
So as a little kid, I basically played every sport under the sun. I danced for like 10 years. I played basketball, I played soccer, I swam, I did gymnastics. I basically tried everything. My parents were very big on like, don't rule it out till you try it. The two sports I really played the longest were soccer and softball. So when I was around like 7-8 years old, I started going to my brother's baseball games, and just watching him play and like seeing that team environment made me really want to start playing softball. Obviously because it was like so late at that point, I didn't really play t-ball or baseball or anything. I went straight into softball. And I played in like my local rec league for about 2 years. And then I had a travel coach basically come up to my parents at a game and be like, hey, we really think she could be good on this team, whatever. So I started playing there, and I basically at that point tried out like every single position. I like played in the outfield, I played in the infield to see what I liked. And there's not very many lefties in the world. So my coach was like, hey, I think you should try pitching. So I took a few pitching lessons, and I just really fell in love with it. I couldn't imagine being an outfielder or an infielder. Like, pitching has always been something that I've really loved. And even like in travel ball, like I played first base. Even my freshman year, I played probably more first base than I pitched. But like pitching has always been something I really loved.
Do you feel like, and I asked Blake Dinchman this the same question, being from Florida, do you feel like you have an advantage because you're able, and we see it here too, you're able to start playing so much earlier than kids from, let's say, New York or, the Northeast or something?
Yeah, I definitely think it's like there's a cost benefit, right? So the benefit is you get to play all year round, which is awesome. So you'll play high school ball like January to May, and then once May starts, you're playing travel ball basically until you start high school again. So I think that part is great. Like, you get to be around your teammates all year long. But I will say, like, the cost of that is that your body is exhausted. So I think it's a good way to like prepare yourself for college, because you really have to think about like, how am I going to make my arm last for 6 months, and then take a 2-week break, and then have it last for 6 more months. So I think it kind of pushes you at a younger age to kind of take accountability for like taking care of your body and make sure that you're preparing for like longevity, making sure you're conditioned and all that kind of stuff. But I really loved being able to play all year round. Like, I couldn't imagine not being able to play for like 6 months of the year.
Was the goal always to, like, once you decided softball's my sport, I'm going to, like, hone in on this, was playing collegiately always the goal for you?
I think once you get to, like, 10, 12 years old, everybody starts watching college softball, and you're like, oh, my God, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, I was a big Florida State softball fan growing up. Like, I had gone to camps there when I was super little. But I think you kind of get, like, a reality check when you turn, like, 13, 14, because you realize, like, how much commitment and time it really takes to even go through recruiting, let alone playing college. So I think once you hit that age, it starts to become like, all right, now this is getting serious. Now this is more like a job. It's still a fun job, but it's a job. And it kind of forces you to like prioritize, like, if you're going to play in college, here's the things I have to start doing. Like, I was a freshman in high school, like coming home from school and sending like 80 emails to college coaches because I had no idea what kind of schools I was even looking at. But my travel coach basically was like, you're better off, even if you're not sure that you want to play in college, you're better off planning if you are and then abandoning the process, as opposed to deciding late and then trying to play catch up. So that was I kind of eased my way into it, and then I was like, okay, like, this is a reality for me. And I ended up having like very close connections with kind of the coaches that I was going through the recruiting process with, and it made me feel like, okay, like, I am good enough to play in college, and like, this is a reality for me if it's something that I want.
So I definitely want to get later into recruiting, but I do want to talk about your time in high school. You were so involved with a bunch of things, and I just want to hear all about what you were doing, because I'm sure it was tough juggling that like very tough playing schedule while also being a student.
So my high school is a big football school, St. Thomas Aquinas High School. Go Raiders. But I loved my experience there. Like, that was something that really allowed me to see, like, you can be a student athlete, but you can also be so many other things. And if you're in the right environment, people encourage that. Like, they want you to do everything that you want to do. So I was in leadership, which is basically like SGA. I like helped play in homecoming one year. I was in like Rowdy Raiders, which was like the senior class. Like, everybody goes to all the football games, that kind of thing. But I really found that I loved being involved in making things happen on campus. And I had gone, so my high school was a private Catholic high school, and it was way smaller than the high school I was supposed to go to. So I had come from two pretty large public elementary and middle schools. So it was definitely a super different experience for me. Like, I went there basically knowing like 2 people in my grade. But I found that I really enjoyed the kind of smaller school experience, because I felt like it gave you so many more opportunities to be involved. Like, my public high school I would have gone to was like 5,000 kids or something like that. So I feel like you kind of get like lost in the sea there of kids, where when you go to a smaller school, like, there's so many more opportunities for you to be able to stand out.
Well, I'm sure you get that here too, compared to like a big, public Division I school. I mean, I feel like everybody knows each other, even here. So that's really cool. So let's get into recruiting now. What kind of originally drew you to Emory, and what was that recruiting process like for you?
So Emory was actually the last school that I started talking to, probably June or July, the summer before my senior year. So I was pretty deep in the process at that point. I had already decided I didn't really want the experience of a Division I or Division II. Like, I found a lot of opportunities to be able to leverage softball for like a high academic kind of experience. So I was looking at a lot of schools in the Northeast, and Emory just was not really on my radar. But our current grad assistant, Natalie Costero, funny story, but she is a very close friend of my travel coach's, and my travel coach went on maternity leave, and Natalie Costero came out and helped coach my team for a little bit. And at the time, she was talking to Emory because she had just gotten accepted to law school here and was thinking about playing her 5th year. And we were playing in a tournament called Atlanta Legacy, and she had been in conversation with Coach Baguetta at the time to kind of talk about maybe the process of taking her 5th year. And she was like, hey, I'm coaching this team of kids. We're at this tournament this weekend. Why don't you come out to a game, and I'll come out and talk to you, and then you can watch the kids also. And she came, and she was drawn to me. And Natalie Custer was like, hey, I love this coach, and I think that you need to give her a chance. She was a very different personality than all of the coaches I had talked to at that point. But I was very open to it. And she basically was very transparent, I guess is like the best word to use, which was something that was super attractive to me in recruiting, because I feel like sometimes you kind of get like a recruiting version of coach, not like how coach is actually going to be when you get there. I did not feel like that was how she was at all. And when she invited me to come on my visit, I basically was like pretty sure that I wanted to go to a different school. I was probably like 90% sure. Like, I remember telling my mom, I'm just going on this visit so I can say no. And it totally changed my mind. Like, I was feeling super scared when I left, because I was feeling so unsure, and I had come to this visit being so confident I wanted to go somewhere else. But I think just being here, getting to meet the girls, getting to see the campus really changed my perspective. And I ended up deciding probably early January of my senior year, so pretty late, that I wanted to come to Emory. And like, looking back, hindsight 2020, like, I am so glad. Like, I definitely feel like I made the right choice.
I will throw in a little side note. I had the same experience. I went to a college visit and was pretty confident I wasn't going to go there. Stepped on the campus and I was like, I can't see myself anywhere else. So don't knock it till you try it. I'm curious, how did being your age, you were still in high school when COVID was going on, and I'm sure that kind of put a little halt on some things. So how did that, maybe affect recruiting? Was that even around the time of recruiting? And, just how did it affect you as an athlete, mentally, physically, all of that?
So I will say, I know Florida gets a bad rep sometimes, but the county that I live in was pretty strict when it came to restrictions and stuff like that around COVID. So I want to say March of my sophomore year was kind of like the beginning of when school and stuff started to get shut down. But they closed all the parks where I lived, so you couldn't even go practice. So my dad ordered like a turf mat off of Amazon, and I would have my pitching coach come to my house, and I would take pitching lessons on the sidewalk in front of my house. So very grateful for that Florida weather, again, because that would not have been possible. But it was kind of a different approach to recruiting, because everything was at that point through video. Again, because I live in the South, like it was easy you could drive 4 hours north and play in a softball tournament where kids in New York couldn't even leave their house for a few months. So I kind of had an advantage in that realm. But I will say you kind of had to get creative with like what you were sending to coaches, because they were seeing so many copies of the same thing. So it made it super hard to stand out. And I feel like because you kind of lost that summer before junior year, which is like your big recruiting summer, it kind of expedited things and forced everything to be done in that summer between junior and senior year. So there was a point where I had thrown probably like 18 days in a row or something ridiculous like that, because I played on kind of a small travel team. So that summer was definitely a grind, but I'm glad that it was the summer before and not that summer. And I think like recruiting has not been the same since then from what I've seen, like just in talking with Coach India and things like that. I do think that now like video and like the way that you present yourself kind of like weighs a lot more on how a coach sees you.
So now let's get into your time here. You've been here for almost 3 full years now. How have things been going?
Very good. I feel like I have played on 3 teams that have been completely different. Like every year I feel like the culture of the team changes so much. I went through coaching transition too, so I feel like that kind of plays into it. But I have just absolutely loved my time here. I know everybody always asks my freshman year, because we had such a small roster size, like how that was. I will say, as much as it was very hard and just like it required a lot of perseverance and like grit and kind of just going outside yourself sometimes. I'm very grateful for that, because I feel like even though I'm a junior, I'm a senior in experience, and most people do not get to have the freshman year that I had, that I got to play 40 games. So I'm super grateful for that. And I think that year, like my freshman year, was like probably the most I've grown as a player in my whole life. So I'm very grateful for that.
That was my first year here, and working those games. Do you go into the fear of like, if somebody gets hurt with such a small roster like that, like there's so many adjustments that would have had to have been made? Yeah,
so at the end of the year last year, my freshman year, when we were playing at NYU, we were warming up pregame and I took a ball off the finger. It was 100% my fault. I just put my hand in my glove a little bit too early. And I was like, oh, immediately my finger's broken, like not a doubt in my mind. But I was supposed to pitch that game and I was like, all right, like I'm just going to suck it up. It is what it is. And I ended up throwing that game, and then coming back from that trip, we still had like 2 weeks left of season. So I basically was like, I'm not getting an x-ray. Like, it is what it is. I'm going to deal with it. Like Mason, our athletic trainer, like did a great job of helping me like splint it, tape my fingers together, like anything we could do to make it hurt less. And like, I would not have done that if we didn't have a roster of 10 people. But I think it kind of pushed a lot of us out of our comfort zones and like, kind of pushed us to get outside of the mental of it and like think about like how important your teammates are to you and like the success of your team is to you, because I think that was something that really pushed me to do that. And like there was a point where I was like, this is crazy, like why am I doing this? But I think it was just very important to me to make sure that my team had the opportunity to play those games, and like I would never want to be the reason that my team had to forfeit. And I think that down the line. Like all 10 of us would say the same thing. So I think that having that kind of like small team mentality, and like thinking about how important our teammates being able to play was to us, that was what allowed us to push through and play a complete season with 10 girls.
So I'm curious to know, I think I've asked this to everybody that has been on this podcast. I'm amazed by the academic work that you guys put in while also being student athletes. And then especially, you know, on like the baseball, softball side, you guys are playing 40 games a season, and sometimes you're gone for an entire weekend. So what is that like, having to balance all of that and the stuff that you do around campus as well?
It's definitely a balancing act. It's like the best way I can describe it. You definitely feel like you're a juggler. But I think I'm very much of the mentality of like, I don't want to do anything halfway. So like if I commit to something, I'm going to do it 100%. I'm going to put 100% of my time into it. And like, I'm going to be intentional while I'm spending my time doing that thing. And I think that is like a pretty consistent mentality across all the student athletes at this school. So I think that allows you to really kind of like be focused on what you're doing. And like, even if 18 hours of your day are like laid out in front of you, having that mentality allows you to like be productive for all 18 of those hours, as opposed to like thinking about the next thing while you're doing the thing that you're at. I have to say, like, during my time here, I feel like I have done a lot better job of softball is softball and school is school. While I'm at softball, I'm thinking about softball, and while I'm at school, I'm thinking about school. I think when I was a freshman, I had a lot of like, I would be at practice and I'd be stressed out about an assignment I had to do later that night or an exam I had the next day. And those practices were like the worst practices of my life, because you're not focused on what you're doing, and then you have a bad practice, and then you go home to study and you're just thinking about how bad your practice was. So it's just like such an unproductive use of time. And I think that that's something that college really teaches you, just kind of like separating the different little segments of your life. And I think like, especially on the road, when we have study hall hours, it's great to kind of just like sit and actually just lock in on school and not think about softball and not think about the fact that you're like 300 miles from school. Like, sit down, focus on your work. And I do think that, especially in the business school, like the professors have been super accommodating and just understanding of like our situation. Obviously, like, we're not in control of the schedule, and like we're at everything we can be at. But yeah, I think it's like your teammates help you keep accountable too. Like, I will say, I do think that across the team, our grades are probably better in the spring than they are in the fall, just because you can't really procrastinate at all. So I feel like we all kind of keep each other on track.
So I'm curious to know, similar to your time in high school, you've been very, very involved here as well. So what have you kind of been up to for the past 3 years? I want to hear all about it. And do you think it almost comes from, you said like in high school you wanted to be very involved on campus?
Yeah, I definitely think that, like, I'm very heavily involved in SAC, which is Student Athlete Advisory Committee. That organization very much resembles that kind of like leadership kind of structure. And that was something that I was super interested in high school, so I feel like that definitely guided me towards SAC. Right now, I'm the head of community engagement, so a lot of like organizing service events and kind of making sure that like we as a student athlete body are giving back to the Emory community and the Atlanta community. And I think that is something that is kind of a guiding thing in my life. Like, I really appreciate giving back and like kind of giving back to organizations that have supported you and helped you when you've grown up. Like, I go back and coach in my travel organization that I grew up playing in when I was 10 years old. And like the temple I grew up going to religious school at. So I think that kind of pushed me into SAC, because that was the place where you had the opportunity to be able to do things like that. But I also really enjoy just being able to connect with other student athletes through that organization. I think that having a way for student athletes to advocate for themselves is something that's super important, because I think that sometimes you don't really get a voice, even though you are giving so much to the university. So I think that having an organization like that is something that's super important, and I'm very grateful I get to be involved in it.
So a few weeks ago, during the swim and dive championships that were here, the UAA commissioner, Sarah Odie, was here. She was our guest on our podcast, and I know that you also met with her. So what was that conversation like? And, you know, that's the time for you to go and say, hey, I'm being the voice for our student athletes here.
I really enjoyed my conversation with her. She is so cool. I was very impressed by her. We talked a lot about like my experience that I've had thus far here at Emory. We talked about my recruiting process, the coaching transition I've been through, and my academics on the side as well. But I definitely felt that she was super invested in hearing a lot of different perspectives on the student athlete experience here, which obviously is like great. Like I would never imagine that my conversation with the UAA commissioner would have gone that way. So I was very impressed by just her willingness to listen and kind of just like see what she could do to make sure that we are getting the fullest of our experience here. But I think she was super pleased with just the kind of, she told me like she had conversations with several student athletes that are super involved in athletics as well. And she seemed super pleased with what they had to say about their experience here. And I'm sure it was super positive because what I had to say was super positive too.
So let's get into the season now. You're already 4 games in, a 4-0 start. Can you give us a little preview into how you think the season's going to go?
Yes, I think we definitely have now the depth. Like our team has grown every year. We didn't lose any. We're not losing any seniors between this year and next year, which is crazy. So we definitely have a young team. My junior class is only 4, so we are definitely outnumbered. But because of that, I feel like the sophomore class has really stepped up and taken on some more of those like leadership type roles. Like I definitely think that because there's not as much of like a seniority type of structure, it kind of puts everybody in a situation where they can hold other people accountable, pick each other up. Like it's not just juniors picking on sophomores, it's freshmen picking on sophomores too. So I think having that kind of united front is definitely changing the culture a lot in a good way. But I'm super excited to see what we can do. I do think that the bats we have right now are ridiculous. So I'm very excited to see what we do. I know my roommate, Ashley Chu, is very close to breaking some records, program records. So I'm rooting for her too. But yeah, I think that the 4 games that we played last weekend were some of the most fun games I've played since I've been here. And I think it's going to continue to be that way.
Now, you mentioned there's no seniors on your program. So do you, Ashley, Ella, and Mackenzie almost feel that like that sense of urgency to like, yes, everybody's kind of involved, but us 4 need to step up and kind of show everybody the ropes?
Yes, I definitely think that even like since Coach Baggetta has left, I do feel like us 4 kind of carry on a lot of the things that she taught when we were here. And I feel like we kind of carry on that culture that the team had when she was here. So I think now it's kind of like a hybrid culture of what she had to give us and what Coach India has for us as well. I do think that the 4 of us we all see each other in that way. And I think it's super awesome to have, like, I think the 4 of us have such different personalities. So I think it's really great to have a class like this where every single kid can find an upperclassman if they need advice, if they need something that we can give them. I think that there's somebody that they can relate to in every class, which is super awesome. But I definitely think like I have been so impressed with the other girls in my class and their ability to step up and kind of perform and lead by example in high pressure situations. I know like Ella has had several walk-offs since she's been here. And Mackenzie has just been killing it on the mound. So I'm super excited to see what she does this season too.
Well, you guys definitely are outnumbered. I think this is one of the biggest recruiting classes I've ever seen come in. But it seems like there's a lot of talent there. And, things have been looking good so far. So what are you looking forward to from those freshmen?
I am very much looking forward to conference play. I think that this team is going to be extremely competitive with especially like Case and WashU. I know they tend to be our rivals in conference, so I'm super excited to see how those series go. But I do think that having a sophomore class where a lot of the girls have played so many games and having our class that all of us have played so many games. We have that now more experience factor, and I feel like a lot of the other teams where they're losing seniors every year, they kind of lose that, and then they have kids that they're playing their first games in conference, which is definitely high pressure. But I think that our freshmen are ready for the challenge, ready to step up. Like, they are definitely serious competitors, and I'm super excited to see how they perform in conference. Like, I think it definitely feels a lot more personal when you're playing those games. Like, I could tell you the first time we played Case Western, it was definitely personal, and we took the series from them my freshman year. So I think getting to see them play in those situations and like see that fire get lit under them, I think is going to push them to a place I haven't seen them be yet, which I'm super excited to see.
Let's also just throw in there that was a top 10 ranked Case Western as well, not just a rival Case Western. So let's get into the fun part. 1 week from today, we get to go to Hawaii. There's 6 games to be played, a lot of adventures to go on. So what's kind of the vibe right now? Is everybody super excited?
Yes, I definitely think we have a triple doubleheader this weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So we're definitely focused on that first. Coach India definitely reminded us about that yesterday of like, hey, we have games to play this weekend and they're good teams. So we're definitely focused on that right now. But I do think that there is kind of like a little like underlying excitement because everybody's just ready to go to Hawaii. Like, I honestly can, like, it's surreal that I'm saying that. I honestly cannot believe that we're doing that. And I'm just so grateful that we have the opportunity to do that. Like, I was talking to my parents about it and my mom was like, when else in your life are you ever going to get to go on a girls trip with 20 of your best friends, which is awesome. So I'm super excited for that. And I do think that, it kind of pushes us to want those wins even more this weekend. Because we definitely want to go there on a high note and we want to leave there on a high note too.
I'm also very thankful that they are allowing me to go on their Hawaii trip with them. There's going to be so much going on while we're there. Aside from the games, we're doing things like Pearl Harbor and, the Dole Plantation. And so what are you looking forward to outside of playing?
I definitely think that, like, I've had this experience on all the travel trips we've been on. But I feel like you don't really remember the games as much as you remember the things outside of the games. So I'm super excited. Like, I know we're going on a catamaran the morning after we get there. So even though we have to stay up till 10 p.m. so we get on Hawaii time, and I'm sure we're all going to be super exhausted. I can't wait to do that. I've never been to Hawaii, so and I don't think very many of the girls have. So I think it will be super cool to kind of have all those first-time experiences together. But yeah, I think it's going to be amazing.
I will throw in there that if you want to catch all of their adventures on the Hawaii trip, we will be posting so much content from Emory Athletics and Emory Softball on all of our channels. So be on the lookout for that. So I know it's a little early to talk about post-grad plans, but I'm curious to know if you have them, what you're kind of hoping for after graduation in, the next few years and what you want to see.
So I actually am doing the Master's of Science and Business Analytics program at Goizueta next year. So I will complete that program and my BBA in 4 years, which, again, insane that you could do that at a university where you're a student athlete. But again, that's part of the reason why I chose Emory. I'm not 100% sure what I want to do yet. I know I want to do something in data analytics. Like, that was something that I came into college with, and it's definitely something that I'm leaving with. Like, all my experiences academically have just reaffirmed that is the right path for me. I definitely am leaning more towards like the analytics and sports path or like a marketing analytics kind of path, just because that's kind of where I've found I am the most passionate. But yeah, I'm super excited to see kind of what that master's program has in store for me. And I do think that it will be a super interesting experience to be a master's student and an athlete at the same time. But my good friend Mackenzie Duford is doing the same thing, so we'll be in it together. Well,
good luck to you guys next year. That will be a lot of work. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been such a great conversation, and we will see you guys in Hawaii next week.
Bye. Thank you.